Hi, as you're coming in, please make sure that you have a seat in between each person. Again, please make sure that you have a seat in between each person and that you log in, you sign in with the QR code.
Sophia, listen, bro.
Don't forget to log your seats as you come in, please, and sit every other seat. There's enough seating for everybody. Every other seat, and log your seat and your block.
Just a reminder, as you're coming in, to leave a seat in between each of you, an empty seat.
Baila la foca, tu boca y mi boca besándonos toca.
nos olvidamos y nunca más nos encontramos. Unos tragos se embriagaron, nos perdimos, olvidamos y nunca más nos encontramos. Te vas, no me dices nada, ¿qué pasa que ya no te veo? No te veo. Te vas, no me dices nada, ¿qué pasa que ya no te veo? No te veo. Te vas, no me dices nada, ¿qué pasa que ya no te veo? No te veo. Te vas, no me dices nada, ¿qué pasa que ya no te veo? No te veo.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for coming. Welcome. Make sure you log your seat and row and block. We are skipping seats today, even though it is not necessary. This is just an extra precaution. Thank you. Okay. So we have the 50-minute block, so we kind of have to just get started right away. Press for time. So again, thank you. I'm Ana Tellado. I am the club advisor this year for Hispanic and Latinos Unidos Student Club, and the students wanted to do a Hispanic Heritage Celebration, but because of the way the year started, we ran out of time with the calendar, the official calendar. September 15th to October 15th is the month designated by the government. However, we here celebrate all year long, and today is Dia de los Muertos número 2 in Mexico and South America, so happy Day of the Dead to those who celebrate. And we decided, well, the club president here decided to hold the activity today to keep it inside the Hispanic calendar. So I am going to pass the microphone to the officers, to the presidents, Olivia and Peter, and they will take it from here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter Dukakis.
I'm Olivia Helfrich-Tapia. Thank you for coming to our second panel of the day. Today we're going to talk with teachers from North, from South, and Peter's mom. And they're all teachers who are going to share their perspectives on being Latino or Hispano in our schools or in Newton in general. And we hope to highlight the diversity that exists within Latino communities because we are not a monolith.
And if you are an underclassman, not a senior, you probably have not experienced one of these kind of days that Newton North likes to hold where we celebrate a specific group a specific marginalized group. So we're really excited for that to be some of your guys' first experiences because this is something really special that North likes to do where we celebrate, again, like I said, these groups that aren't always celebrated. So thank you guys for coming.
And this, I believe, would be the first days featuring or centering Hispanic and Latino voices for any student in this school. So we really hope you appreciate this opportunity to learn. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna get started. My name is Alicia. I'm a senior, and I guess we could start by just going around and saying your names and how you identify ethnically.
My name is Christina Schultz. I'm a Spanish teacher here at Newton North, and I'm Latina, Hispana, Argentina.
Hola, my name is José Luis Sancho. I'm from Spain and I identify as Hispanic.
Hi, I'm Joanna Chacon de Entwistle, and I identify as Salvadoran American.
Good morning. My name is Adriana Dukakis. I identify as Hispanic, Latina. My parents are from Colombia, and I work at the Ed Center.
Hi, I'm Liana Kish. I'm in the English department. I identify as Bolivian and Latina.
Good morning. I'm Alicia Carrillo. Today I identify as Puerto Rican American.
Hello, I'm Jenny Moriali, and I identify as Latina Hispanic. My mom is from Colombia.
Ana Tellado, I identify as Hispanic Latina, specifically Puerto Riqueña.
Okay, so the first question is going to be, how do you feel being a Latina educator at a predominantly white institution?
I have the actually just started in education this year, but I feel it's important to have diverse staff, diverse communities so that the students can see the different ranges of, cultures and whatnot. I work with special ed students, and not a lot of diversity in that department because there are students that came from North and South as well. And I think it's important for them to see different cultures, on any level. Hispanics particularly dear to me as a Colombian, but we don't see a lot of that in Newland. And the more we, get the word out there and have more workers in the public schools that are of different ethnicities, different, race, color, students will be able to identify more with, their staff and their teachers.
All right, yeah, so that question, working in a predominantly white institute, I guess what it brings to mind is the fact that there are things when I'm among my people that are just understood, things that are very clear. But when you're in a predominantly white institute, sometimes you have to do a lot of explaining and changing of hearts and minds. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I suggested that we teach more books by people of color in my English department at Maine South, and it got some backlash. Like, I heard one woman saying, "Oh, are you going to join me at the book burning?" Like, they took it to the extreme, and it took for 2020 to happen, for mass protests to happen, to finally change their minds that this was actually a good idea to teach more books by authors of color. And so, constantly having to go through this process of explaining and getting people to understand things that otherwise are pretty clear to me. And it's a lot of advocacy that has to happen.
For me, I think it's important that here at school, when we are talking about different people coming from different places, it's important to make everybody realize that if you can identify as Hispanic or Latino, it doesn't mean that everybody is behaving or thinking the same way. So my experience here on Rhode Island is a very good one because we have teachers from different parts of the world, speaking different languages, even within the Spanish department, we come from different countries, or people who have been living or studying in different Spanish countries. And I think this brings a kind of a new perspective, not only to the students, but also to the faculty, in terms of being conscious of the diversity that implies or what is behind the word Hispanic and Latino. And sometimes it's a conscious act that goes through that. Sometimes it's more the way you behave, the way you express yourself, with respect and also taking being respected. But the basic thing is open, and I feel that I feel confident and open to what I can express being my culture and share that with others.
Yeah, I would like to agree with Senor Sancho. I think it's for me, it's very special to be in a community, to be part of a community that values people that are coming from different parts of the world, from different backgrounds, stories. So we all know that any project, any institution, any company that has people from diverse places, from different places, is smarter because we're all bringing what we have to a certain project. So there is an acknowledgement of that in the school, for Newton Public Schools. So I appreciate that very much. We value people coming from all over the world to teach, to learn, and to do the best they can for everybody to succeed.
When talking about a predominantly white institution, the idea of race is right there in the name. And sometimes it's complicated to acknowledge one's own racial identity, especially in the context of community. For me personally, growing up, I identified as white, except the times that other people identified me as otherwise. And my mother is white, American kind of melting pot. My father is Puerto Rican, and like many young people, I was confronted with my Puerto Ricanness by other people. I was born into an active assimilation family. My father was trying to survive economically, professionally. And looking back, I was clueless as a kid and confused when I realized that, oh, I'm not exactly like my predominantly white peers in my predominantly white community. And here at Newton North, there's been an increased emphasis on the discussion of bias, race, ethnicity, self-identity, and it's an evolving process for me. So sometimes being white and brown and Puerto Rican, and I come in and out of my identity all the time. Sometimes it feels wonderful here. There's a lot of support, and sometimes it feels othering.
Thank you. When I saw this question, my first thought was, well, I spent my whole academic career in a predominantly white institution. And I have to say, as an educator now, this has been the most diverse place I've ever been to. My entire academic career, I've had 4 teachers who identified as Hispanic, and only 2 of them were female. So very othering, very alienated I felt most of my academic career, especially since in the high school I was at, we didn't celebrate culture the way I feel we celebrate it here. I feel so empowered to be able to tell my class, like, I am Hispanic, I am Latina, this is my story. When the school I went to, my mother actually teaches, they don't celebrate that. They don't have a Hispanic Heritage Day or month. They don't have a panel. She was so excited when I told her that I was asked to come up that I think she cried. And because she never got to celebrate her culture in the school that she's at. So from my perspective, coming from a place that was very closed off to a place that's so opening and welcoming, where I can teach books written by Hispanic authors, by female Hispanic authors. Like, we kick off our year with House on Mango Street, and it's just a beautiful thing to be able to connect it to myself and then connect to my students through that literature.
So I have been in a predominantly white institution for undergrad, grad school, and work. So that's many years. And in all 3 places, I do feel like the minority that I am. And at North, I'm lucky to be in the World Languages department, which is quite diverse because of the nature of the job that we do. So we have people from all over the place, very diverse environment. But when we are in the full faculty meeting, I find myself, even to this day, and this is my 20th year here, looking for other Hispanics, counting them, whether it's on Zoom or in person, identifying them. And I don't go sit with them. I just need to know where they are. So, like a security blanket, they're there. And I don't feel so singled out when I find the others scattered in the room.
So I'm going to go on to the next question. What made you want to work at Newton North?
I think a lot of it, folks up here have already mentioned that there is a diversity on our campus that I was not finding in other schools that I was applying to for employment. And there were options on the table, and I just really wanted to walk into an environment which, wasn't the most diverse place ever on the history of the planet, but just offered more, I hope it's okay to say the word flavor. I mean, that's what's coming to mind. Just more than in the communities around me. So I grew up in Wellesley. I live in Sudbury, and then there are all the W's in between, right? Wayland, Weston. My commute goes through other places that I could be working, but I'm glad I'm working here.
as my students know, and my department, my husband's a North graduate of 2005, and he spoke incredibly highly of Newton North the entire time we've been together. So when I moved up here and I looked at the mission statement and I saw written in black and white the social justice standards and just this embracing of anti-bias, anti-racist teaching, I thought this is a place that's going to be celebratory of all cultures, not just mine and not just the majority. And this is where I see my career. It became my dream school during graduate school. And I'm just so, basically, they talk the talk in the mission statement, but I feel like we have been walking the walk or trying to walk the walk. And progress is slow in anytime you're trying to change, but I feel like Newton North is ahead of what I've seen in other schools and other districts. I come from New York City, a very diverse area, but even, like I said, the schools there are way behind in terms of the values that North embraces.
I wish I could say I really chose Newton North, but I just was really lucky to land here. I was teaching at another district that was over an hour commute, and my husband at the time said, you've got to work somewhere closer, and cut out, this was back when ads were in the newspaper, cut out the little advertisement and stuck it next to me and said, you're applying for this job. But it was the best thing that could have happened. I've loved it here. I've been here since 1995. And when I started, I had a very supportive department chair, supportive principal. I still have a very supportive department chair and principal. And they helped us start the Latino Culture Club back in, it was 97, Denise Kremen and I, and I'm so excited that the HLU is here. The Latino Culture Club, we had it going for a couple years. I started having babies, and it's kind of, there wasn't anyone who kept it going. But I felt very supported by the administration at that time to start that club, reach out to families. We had special back-to-school nights with just Hispanic Latino families with interpreters in order to try to have those families feel a part of the community, because we noticed that at that time there was a lower attendance rate from that community. So I feel I've loved it here, which is why I've stayed so long.
Well, to me, it was the value of education. Like my colleagues, very well prepared and trained, and I mean, and I had an admiration immediately when I started meeting my colleagues that how everybody was holding high degrees, and there was an intention to have teachers that were very well trained, and of course the caring, all the support that the students receive in general. It's something that is very special to know. So the school wants everybody to succeed and have opportunities despite of where they're coming from. And as an immigrant, this is very important. This is something you don't find in many places. Like, for example, the programs we have to support our students that are going to college and maybe their parents were not able to, or did it in a different place, in a different country. Those are things that in concrete terms, the school is saying, we want you to succeed, or the programs that all the programs that we have are here for the students to succeed, to help, and that is very important. It's something that is very special.
For me, it was a very deliberate choice. 20 years ago, I was in a moment of my life when I needed to decide what I was going to do. Was I going to stay and finish my PhD and go into academia, or was I going to veer into high school? And I decided to take a year off from grad school to try high school, and I fell in love with it. I tried it here at North. And the 4 pillars, or the 4 reasons that I chose North, because I actually got offers in a lot of different school systems, so I went to a few interviews. It was academic excellence of the student body, diversity of the student body. I actually came to the school, I don't think I was supposed to do that, and interviewed the students before I made my choice, because I was comparing it to other school districts that also had a lot of academic excellence. And a competitive salary, I'm not going to deny that. So I discarded immediately the school systems that pay way too little. And the fourth one was the ability to create curriculum, because in some of my interviews, it was very clear that it was going to be dictated what I taught. And I fell in love with the style of the interview here at North. All the teachers that were there were like 10 teachers in my interview committee. They were so fresh, so smart, so flexible. And the idea that everybody had contributed somehow to the curriculum that we were delivering, that really was a winner. And then I tried North for a year, fell in love, and resigned my graduate studies, said goodbye, and here I am.
In my case, I was a teacher in Spain, so when I decided to move to this country, my looking project was in education. I went through a lot of different interviews, and I felt something really special about North. I came for a couple of interviews, different days, and the main thing that I said was first support, and then a kind of something really alive here, not only among teachers, but also what I saw in the student population. So I decided, okay, let's try this one. It seems good. It seems very diverse compared to what things in Spain, coming from a different culture in terms of education and how high school works. And I said, yeah, there is something that is really appealing to me. And the first thing I saw was an immense amount of support from the administration, specifically for my colleagues in the development department. They helped me with adapting to the new system of teaching, the new curriculum, and I was valued for what I can actually. So, and I saw the same kind of support for the students. And I said, okay, I think this is the place where I want to be. After 20 years, I kept thinking, my community is increasingly taking more time every few years, but I decided that it's worth it for me to spend more time on the road and keep my job.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question because we're running out of time. Have you ever faced challenges being Latino at New North? And if you have, how are you dealing with it, or how have you in the past? Have you ever faced challenges being Latino at New North? And if you have, how have you dealt with it in the past, and how are you dealing with it now?
Okay, fine. So I have faced microaggressions from different people at North. I mean, 20 years is a long time, so it's bound to happen, right? From students and faculty. But I react to it according to the person. So sometimes I nip it in the butt. I just make a comment and call it out. And sometimes I just bite my tongue because it's not the time to say anything. And I just learn. Information is power.
I think my big challenge was actually at my interview. So as much as I was looking at North as a place that offered more diversity than some of the other neighboring towns that I would pass through on my commute, I do remember being at the interview table, and there was some question that would suggest that because of my ethnicity, because I was Latina, that I would be the person that would create a class about Hispanic or Latinx literature. Of course, I think 20 years ago, Latinx probably was well, and sitting there thinking, well, I'm not going to speak on behalf of an entire people, so I'm not sure how to answer that question. I do remember feeling both othered in that moment, but also as an imposter. And that imposter syndrome continues to follow me throughout my life. You know, are you Puerto Rican enough? Are you white enough?
Yeah, and so it sticks in my mind. I don't have a good memory, so to have that in my mind for 20 years tells me I should pay attention.
The challenges that I face are around when I'm advocating for something. As I mentioned in my first answer, sometimes I'll advocate, for example, recently I advocated for helping students who are immigrants and who don't know how to navigate the college process necessarily. And I ran a brick wall, and the person I was talking to didn't understand, add on to their workload. I guess why this was important. And I've run into brick walls over the years when I'm trying to advocate for things that I see that my community needs. And the way that we've gotten around it has been by power in numbers. And so, trying again, but this time with other teachers who understand, getting allies. Oftentimes it'll be with my colleagues who are Latino, but sometimes it's also with just allies, people who understand. And then it seems like we can get things moving. Thank you.
When you talked about imposter syndrome, I was thinking about how when I'm with my family, there's no question of how I identify or my background. But when I'm anywhere else, I think it's whether I choose to reveal it or not, for lack of a better way to put it. I think a lot of people would just see me as white, and I don't have an accent. And so I find at times I can be very protective of that information, and I recognize that it's a privilege that it's not out front for everyone to see, and that I can choose when I want to share it or not. So I just wanted to share that part. And I guess that in some ways is my own challenge as much as it is.
I think it is always going to be a challenge as a Hispanic, Latino in a more white community. I mean, I grew up in Southern California, and I was the only Hispanic at my school. There was one African American, one Hispanic. And in a school as big as Newton North, that's pretty rare. Pretty rare. So I come to Newton North, and I've been in the public schools since 2008, and I see a lot of diversity. I mean, you guys may not see it, but I see a lot compared to what I grew up with back in the 1980s. I see a lot of advancement in cultures and diversity in the schools and awareness. I mean, I think the reason why I wanted to work for the public schools, not just because all my kids have gone to Newton public schools, is because of what I see as so different from what I grew up with. If I had a community like this, so diverse and so aware, I think it's not just diverse, but it's the awareness of the staff and the students and the people to really kind of bring up those uncomfortable things, like bring up things like am I an imposter? Is that same thing that you guys are saying? Like, I look Hispanic, so people, it's like no doubt that I'm Hispanic, but my kids don't necessarily look as Hispanic as I do because their dad is not Hispanic. And so it's like these little idiosyncrasies that were just kind of swept under the rug back in the day, that now at a school like North, and certainly with clubs like this, where it's like, no, I am Hispanic, and I'm proud to be Hispanic. I'm Colombian 100%, and it makes me feel empowered almost, that I don't have to, my kids don't have to kind of live in that trying to be white world. I remember in high school trying to, joining all the clubs, going to cheerleading, trying to do all these things that made me more white. And now I look back and I'm like, why would I do that? Why would I make myself less Hispanic than I am? I mean, I think nowadays in a school like this, it's empowering to bring out who you are and your culture in all sorts of different types of words. I was in the music business. I'm not an educator, but I just got into it because I think it's fascinating to kind of educate students on differences in different communities and different, a Hispanic woman can help the special ed department, not just, I don't know. It's fascinating to me that it's so different nowadays, and that you guys are so in tune and aware of our differences. But differences are good. It doesn't have to be bad. You know, it doesn't have to be a negative. You know, that you're Hispanic or French or whatever. You know, we're all different. Same pot. You know, we're all just humans. You know, trying to advance our lives. You know, for ourselves.
Hello? Okay. How have you kept true to your identity and expressed yourself in this school? Or, I'm sorry, let me stop. What are times when you've hidden parts of these parts of yourself? I don't know if you understood that.
Like the Hispanic part? I mean, I don't know. Like I was just saying, I don't see it as different. It's just who I am. My parents were Colombian, and I'm proud of the fact that my parents came off, got into the States in 1970, right before I was born, and they didn't speak an ounce of English. I mean, I learned English in kindergarten, and I got thrown into a kindergarten school without speaking English, and I just had to figure it out. My parents didn't speak English. My dad, became an engineer. He just worked his way up, and I don't know, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
How have you kept true to your identity and expressed yourself in this school?
I think before, back in the day, it was more like I was saying, like hiding or the impossible thing, or like, can I be white enough? Can I be more white? And I think as you get older and as you kind of start, kind of realizing that for me, it's an amazing thing that I actually am proud to be different, like Hispanic and not mainstream. I love my salsa music, my merengue music, and at any opportunity, I, have a dance party with Spanish music, just because that's what reminds me of home. I grew up with that. My parents, grew up listening to, Spanish music, and so I see it as a proud thing, and I walk around with it like that, and I think it helps me not feel less than like I did when I was, in high school.
Yeah, when I was your age, the students in the crowd, I definitely felt the same thing of I wanted to assimilate. And, I didn't have assimilation as parents. My parents were like, en la casa se habla español. Like, in this house, we will speak in Spanish. But it was interesting that I still felt like I needed to assimilate. I wanted to hide that Latino part of myself. I wanted to be essentially white is what I wanted to be. And I'm curious if this generation still goes through that phenomena, because I know that of my generation, talking with, my peers now who are my same age, they all say the same thing. Like, well, yeah, they also wanted to assimilate. They wanted to be more white. And I don't know if you all still experience that, but definitely for me, it's like in school, we didn't really learn about people that looked like us. The only thing we ever learned about was culture, white books, white history, and the only representation I saw of myself was on TV, and that was not pretty, right? Yeah, and I'm wondering if now that there's more representation out there, whether we've nipped that in the bud where there's no wish to assimilate. But I guess the transition for me when I started to embrace my culture was when I started to read more, writings by people who look like me, shows that represented, listen, I wanted to speak my language, eat the food, celebrate, and just enjoy my culture and that part of me. And so if you're in that phase where you're still wanting to assimilate, I definitely encourage you to just explore your culture more because it's empowering. Wanting to assimilate, I mean, that's fine, but it's kind of a hit to the soul. Like it kind of fractures you. Whereas embracing who you are, that feels healthy to me, at least. Yeah.
For me, I moved to this country when I was in love with a family. And actually, I don't think too much about if I'm Hispanic or Spanish or whatever. I don't know. Obviously, I enjoy the things want to transmit that to my students and my colleagues because it's part of what I am. But after many years living in this country, I realized that I'm a little bit less Spanish or Hispanic, and I'm adding some other adjectives like more American, whatever American to me is saying, okay, more important than identify exclusively with the one thing is express myself the way I am. And I'm in the process of change all the time. I learn from my colleagues, I learn from my students, I learn from the place I go and I live. And that's been part of being myself. And that's what I basically want to transmit. Of course, I have a background of identifying with music and food and traditions and language, specific language. But I'm seeing myself like in a process of growing, and that growing part incorporates many things that I never thought about when I was living in Spain. And thanks because of living here in this country and in this city now, I'm learning and improving, I think, and incorporating that into who I am.
It's also true that we teach Spanish, so for us, we are forced to, and that's what we do. So it's probably easier in the curriculum to be Argentinian, or if I have to play, I don't know, a tango versus, I don't know, bachata, I'll probably go for the tango. Although it's also true that in Argentina, I never listened to tango because for my family, tango is just, my family is also immigrants from other places. So in some countries in Latin America, you know, we have so many immigrants that I don't know what it is to be Argentinian, actually. There are many things, yes. Maybe our empanadas or something you share with your family, but Slovak food was more common during my Sunday. It was a mix of barbecue, asado, and Slovak food because my grandparents were from there. So I think we have a great opportunity in our classes to bring our identity. Sometimes I feel that I don't know if you enjoy that TED Talk, America Ferrera saying, the actress that saying she was going to different castings and everywhere she went, she wasn't Latina enough or Hispanic enough. So sometimes that's a little bit what happens because so what do you want me to do? To dance flamenco for you? Or am I supposed to be dancing tango? We have a fabulous French teacher in our department who happens to be a great tango dancer because it's her passion, but it's, I don't know, do you dance zarzuela? So it's interesting how coming here to the US, we started thinking about these things. I went to BU and I value there the diversity. That's why I came to this country, to see people from different places because that's something that was a little, I don't know, was different in mine. But on the other hand, I don't know, we have a great opportunity in our classes, I think, to bring all this diversity.
We have time for like one question from the audience, so if anybody has a question to ask, you can.
Anyone have a question? Audience questions or no? You ask questions in class, the teachers, they know there's just a question.
What's one thing that students can do to make you feel accepted at this school?
I think this is just a general response to that question. Say hello. Share your ideas. Share your identities. This year I'm inviting my students to call me by my first name. And I would encourage my students to take me up on that invitation. It's interesting, I did that with a view that maybe it would make a difference for my students, and I have found that it has made a big difference for me. Call me by my name, and I feel seen. Thanks.
I guess I'm at Newton South, so it's a little bit different, but we just had our first ever heritage event, similar to you guys, and I was so worried that nobody would show up. I thought we would just put all this work in and nobody would care, but of course people cared. I think just showing up is enough. Like, you guys coming here, it shows that you care about, you know, the issues of the Latino community, and I think that means a lot to me, and it means a lot to us.
Is that all? You could bring in some chicharron too.
Have you, like, well, 'cause there's like Puerto Rican people and like Dominican people who like look and like more Hispanic than like some of you guys. So have you ever felt like a little different, or like, or, well, I don't know, like being around them, do you feel like connected with them because not all of you like look like Hispanic? I don't know if that's offensive or not, but I just.
I think speaking to what Ms. Carrillo, Alicia was saying about imposter syndrome, like my mom's side of the family looks very Colombian. Me and my family don't really look as Colombian, and sometimes when we're with them and they're speaking Spanish and they're cooking all the great food, and my sisters and I don't have that part of us, because my mom was the assimilator because for survival reasons. If she spoke Spanish or she spoke English with an accent, she was attacked after school by peers. She was embarrassed by educators. So for her, she had to hide a lot of her Colombian heritage and culture from herself and then from us. So sometimes when I am around people who do look Colombian and do speak the language and can cook the food, I do feel like I'm not Colombian enough. I'm not Spanish enough. I don't speak the language, so it makes me feel like I'm not enough. But I also don't feel white enough, because I'm not really connected so much to that side of me. I'm kind of equal, kind of sometimes more, sometimes less. So yeah, I think sometimes when you are around, and then sometimes your family can even perpetuate those feelings when they're like, well, you mean you don't speak Spanish? You're not really Spanish then if you don't speak Spanish. So it's a lot of kind of an internal war within ourselves of, when are we Spanish enough? When are we Latina enough? When are we white? Is there ever really, are we ever really enough? And you carry that with you for years and years. And as someone said, like, it fractures your identity. And sometimes even, you know, now sitting up here is like, well, am I enough to be able to sit up here and speak about my experiences? Or am I taking up space? And it's a really you know, troubling feeling to go through that.
We are enough, and I live in that space so often. I remember being in Bayamon in the National Soccer Stadium, and my daughter was playing for the Puerto Rican national team, and my father was sitting next to me. And when the Puerto Rican national anthem started to play, there was sadness in me. I didn't know the words. I didn't know the tune. But there was so much pride in seeing my daughter in that uniform, standing with her teammates, belting out that anthem, standing next to my father as he belted out that anthem. And I treasure those moments. And sometimes those moments happen right here in school. I'm so appreciative of our colleagues who make it possible for people of color to meet in affinity groups. That's when I feel, more often than not, like I'm enough. I sometimes walk in there feeling like I shouldn't be here, but by the time I leave, I feel the love. And I urge students, if you have an opportunity to join affinity groups, just try it out. Just take it for a test drive, see how it feels.
Thank you. I think I feel just a little bit, I never felt white in my life. Like it wasn't an identity that I would say that I am. As soon as I open my mouth, everybody knows that I'm Hispanic, and everyone always asks, where are you from? That's the first question that I hear from anybody new that I meet, no matter what their ethnicity or race is. Where are you from? And it's not ill-intentioned, it's just curiosity, right? So I have always been the other, except when I was growing up in Puerto Rico, where everybody was Puerto Rican, and when I was in high school, because my high school, 45 minutes from here, Lawrence High School, is mostly minorities. And it wasn't the academies that it is today. I'm at the old Lawrence High School in front of the library in Lawrence Street. And the truth is, I felt like the majority of the school was Hispanic. So the white people were the minority, and we called them blanquitos. So los blanquitos wasn't me. That's all I knew. I didn't speak the language. I was ELL. I was learning English. I graduated high school still speaking very little, limited English, and learning it for college that summer, right? Like, truth now. So yeah, I never had an issue hanging out with Hispanic people or identifying as other when I'm with them. But because Lawrence is very diverse too, there are a lot of people from Mexico, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. When I was speaking Spanish, the first question people asked was, where are you from? Because they wanted to know which nationality of all of the Hispanic nationalities I belong to. So it is the question, but there was a unity, right? Because most of the people there were ELL like me. So yeah, so that was my community.
For time reasons, yeah, this is going to have to be the last one.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Thank you to my colleagues for agreeing to sit here under the spotlight. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.